how's it going, everybody? Today on Vox&Hops episode number 10, I sit down with the one, the only, the hardest working metalhead in Montreal, Jason Rockman. He's the singer of Slaves on Dope, and he's also a DJ at CHOM. Me being a kid, I grew up listening to CHOM. It's like the one radio station that has, some rock songs here in Montreal. It was my go-to station and still is most of the time when I climb into a car or something and I don't have, a way to hook up my phone to play what I want to hear. So I turn to CHOM still to this day. Growing up, I always looked up to Jason. We became friends a few years back. He graciously accepted to do this interview. So I'm very excited to share what Jason had to say with all of you. Here it is, Vox&Hops episode number 10.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? I'm here with Jason Rockman, the hardest working metalhead in Montreal.
It's funny.
How are you doing, man?
I'm good. It's fun to hang out because I don't get to see you often. But every time I do see you, I'm happy.
It's true. We've known each other a long time. I'll tell you my first memory of you.
Okay.
Snow Jam.
Oh, my God.
At
Molson Stadium?
That's right.
How old were you?
I was just my first semester in CJEP.
Okay.
I remember you guys were handing out these like little cards.
Yeah,
Probably
the baseball cards.
Promoting the album, I assume.
Yeah.
And I remember going back to CJEP and I had met you and looking at the picture and being looking up to you.
Oh God!
So it's nice to be able to sit here and hang out with you on a Tuesday morning.
Well, the first time that I think the first time that I met you, I think I saw you play and you had that wonderful long hair.
Oh.
And then I found out that you liked, that's my dog, that you liked Faith No More, Mike Patton. And I think that's what I was like, oh, this guy likes Mike Patton and he's a good singer. And he's not at all like the guy he is on stage, which is like me, because I'm totally a different person. I'll go up on stage and the guy's like, oh, that guy's a total dick, but I'm not. I'm soft-spoken and into all this different things that people wouldn't think I'm into. So I think you're kind of like that. From what I've seen,
it's a therapy for me.
Yeah.
Everything. I have it all inside me somewhere. That's okay. That's Jason's dog.
That's my dog.
He'll be putting in his thoughts throughout the whole thing. And I use metal as a cathartic experience.
Yeah.
And I feel much more zen afterwards.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I know what you mean, because when I would go and when I would play and we would be. That's probably the only thing I miss about touring is when we would play and we would be, 15, 20 shows into a tour. There was just that calmness that would be there, and you were in this. It was just nice. Everything locked in. Everything was good. It was good.
I don't know about you, but when I'm on the road, I don't listen to metal.
Honestly, and I get so many people that send me records, and they think, because yes, I am a metalhead, but I like so many other things. And I like so many other styles of music, and I actually never listen to metal.
Really?
I mean, I do, but I don't listen to metal a lot. Not a lot less than people would think. I mean, I'd much rather sit down and put on an Elton John record. I mean, I don't know. I always keep up to date on what's going on, and when a big metal record comes out, I still celebrate it, and I'm excited. But I'm very selective with my metal now, and I
Let's give people a rundown of what Jason Rockman does now. You are the singer of Slaves on Dope.
Yeah, well, that's probably the thing I've been doing the longest. I work at CHOM. I'm DJ at CHOM. I'm coming up on 9 years this fall. Well, actually, December 2nd will be 9 years I've been at CHOM, so almost a decade. I work with Comic-Con, Montreal and Ottawa and Quebec. And I work with Heavy Montreal and do some stuff with Evenco. I do voice work. I do all kinds of things. I'm a pretty busy guy.
Yeah, I always everything you post, I'm like, how does this guy do it?
Yeah. I'm really lucky because I found a way to do everything I do. I like. I don't do anything there's very few things that I dread having to go do. And that's where I wanted to get to. I said to myself, as long as everything I do I enjoy, then I'm winning. Not to quote Charlie Sheen, but I feel like I'm winning because I think it's important. I think you get one pass through in this thing, and if you can enjoy what you're doing and wake up every day and not have to go like, oh, I mean, there are aspects of certain things, and everybody goes through funks, but I don't there's nothing I do that I dislike. And if I don't like doing something, I won't do it.
That's very lucky of you.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, I also set myself up. I learned through trial and error of, I spent years doing things I didn't like doing. And, but yeah, I'm very, very fortunate to get to do what I like to do. But I believe in luck, but I also believe in positive thinking. And if you put the work in, you put the effort in, and you say yes to things when you might not want to say yes to things, and do certain things, not everything is necessarily exactly where you want to be, but sometimes if you push, you'll get to that point where you want to be. And I think I'm at a point right now, and knock on wood, I hope it stays this way, that I'm happy with everything I do.
You're extremely fortunate and hardworking, so you deserve to be where you are.
Yeah.
In my opinion,
I mean, there is luck involved, but I just think sometimes people will fall on the rest on their laurels, and they'll say, "Oh, well, he's lucky," but. It's a combination of a lot of things.
You're a hustler too.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
I don't know when you sleep.
Yeah, it's about 5-6 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're still in good shape?
I try to, I try.
Yeah.
I do enjoy things, the food. But I try to keep things balanced, and it's not always easy.
Speaking of enjoying things, one of my main passions is beer.
Yeah. Which is interesting.
Because
I never thought I would be doing a beer podcast.
So, just to put that into context, can you tell me what your very first experience with beer was like?
My first experience with beer was probably when I was about 12. Probably about 12. That's the earliest memory I have of drinking. Was when I was, I think around before I was 13. When I was about 12 years old, my dad at the time was dating a lady who had a son, and in my I guess from about 12 to about into my early 20s, he was my stepbrother. They were, as long as they were together, and they were together way beyond that. But he was very influential in I lived with him from about age 12 to about age 16, 17, and I had my first drinks with him. I think it was Christmas time, and it was like, oh look, he's getting, he's drinking, and he's acting silly, and oh, it's cute. And I think with me, it wasn't necessarily my palate for beer developed later on, but I mean, there's a whole other side to it too. It wasn't a very necessarily an enjoyable experience. But when I did drink, because I don't drink anymore, when I did drink, I really, really enjoyed beer. But I don't have those. My memories with alcohol in terms of beer were more when I started. Probably when I was about 17, 18, when I started developing more of a palate for beer. I think I remember drinking Bredor because it had more alcohol in it, and it got me drunk faster. But my palate with beer, I was around when Saint-Ambroise first came on the scene. That's probably the last time I drank, was around the Saint-Ambroise Boreal first coming in the microbrewery scene in Quebec. So I think they were pretty much pioneers.
Yeah, Unibrew, Saint-Ambroise, Boreal. Right. Probably the biggest of the small, big microbrews at this point. Yeah,
because I remember when they came around, it was a big deal. Before that, I mean, I'm an alcoholic. I'm a recovered alcoholic, so.
How long have you been?
26 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I didn't really mess with beer in sobriety until I was about 20 years sober. And when I mean mess with beer, try a non-alcoholic, because I was very worried it was going to be a trigger.
When did you realize that alcohol was an issue in your life?
Well, I stopped when I was 21.
Okay.
But I mean, I knew I knew deep down I had a problem, probably a few years before that.
Because you were just in excess?
I was just drinking every day. Okay. And way too much. And it wasn't, I was young too. I mean,
that's what I find very interesting, is that
I realized that at a young age, when most people were a lot of people would, if they were in a structured home, would be experimenting with drinking. Because a lot of people start when they're out of the house, when they're in college, and, not very many people are drinking in high school.
So it's almost like very mature of you.
Yeah. That I look at as being very lucky. If it had any kind of luck, or any kind of, if I was guided in any way, however you want to call it, if it was a spiritual awakening, if it was whatever it was, I had that at 21, and I was very lucky.
Did you have people around you that
nobody told me?
You just knew it.
I just had, I had a series of bad experiences, and I just said, okay, I think I really should do something about my drinking. Wow. And I don't even know where the thought came from to call Alcoholics Anonymous, but I did, and it was the best thing I ever did.
And do you still go to meetings nowadays?
Yeah, I try to. It's funny because I always have people in my life that I work with, because if you know anything about AA, it's a 12-step program, and basically your last step is to carry the message to somebody else. So I'm always working with people that have issues with substance, depending where they're at. But I always surround myself with people that need help, because that's what keeps me sober. So I don't get to go to as many meetings, and my job really screwed that up, because I work 7 to midnight, and most of the meetings I would go to would be in the evening. So a lot of the groups that I would go to, I couldn't go to anymore. So I don't go as much as I'd like to, but I mean, I'm 26 years in. I carry it in my heart. It's part of my life. It's like my way of life. It's like my code of conduct. So it's pretty much ingrained in me, but I try to go as much as I can. And when I get to go, it's a treat.
And when you surround yourself, do you mean that you're a sponsor to people?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I have a couple of guys I sponsor. Like right now I've got 3 or 4 people I'm working with, and it's, when I'm at various different stages. I've got one guy that I've been sponsoring for 25 years, who's my best friend. I've got another guy who's just thinking about coming around, and I've got one guy that's about 4 months in, and another guy who's been slipping for a few years, but he's in and out.
Do you still have relationships with your sponsors? Yeah,
we'll have one. I still have my sponsor, who's a really, really old friend of mine, Peter, and he just gave me my 26-year cake. You get it like every year. You get your cake and your.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and what's really cool is if are you into punk, like old school punk rock?
Not overly, but I'm interested in everything.
Okay, well, do you know the band TSOL?
No.
Okay, so they're like an old punk band from LA. They were really influential, like around the Black Flag, like that whole time of punk rock. Like if you're into Rollins and you hear them talk about the Black Flag touring days and when the Misfits and all that, like
it was with TSOL.
TSOL were part of that, and the lead singer of TSOL, who's been sober since like '89, Jack Grisham. He's a really, really cool guy. Cool guy to follow on social media too. Very opinionated, but I love his whole approach to sobriety. And he actually sent me a 26-year coin, which was really, really cool. I got it in the mail the other day. He's like, "I'm sorry it's late, but here you go." I was pretty happy about that.
So do you find you have more of like an in-depth connection with people who are also sober, recovering alcoholics?
I mean, I think there's definitely there definitely is a connection. I think just because we speak the same language, and I shouldn't say what I love about this disease, but what's unique about this disease, well, like every other disease, it doesn't pinpoint who it's going to attack. It doesn't. People, alcoholics are all from different walks of life, all shapes, sizes. So it doesn't discriminate. And I think what I love about AA is that it really, you'll get in a room and you'll have all walks of life, all different kinds of people. And it doesn't matter what religion you are, it doesn't matter what you believe, your common bond is that struggle to stay sober. And it's a beautiful thing, because it really, the whole basis of that program is based on communication. And I think it's so important. So it's a recipe for success too, for me and every other areas of my life,
How did you, because most people use like alcohol or substances in these situations to cope with stuff, to mask something. How did you cope without the alcohol?
Well, that's what the 12 steps help with. They really give you a blueprint on what to do. It's like a guidebook.
Okay.
On how to deal with those things. And there's different steps to the program. There's different, you have to learn how to learn how to live without alcohol in your life. And I have this saying where they say, if you look at the word alcoholism, you take away the alcohol and you still have the isms, and that's the stuff you have to work on.
Okay. Yeah.
It's noticing certain character traits, certain things that you need to work on in your life to not get to that point where you feel like you have to drink.
Yeah.
And it's fairly simple, but at the same time, when that obsession's there, it's like any other kind of obsession. And I see my alcoholism come up in different areas of my life all the time, and I have to keep it in check.
But it's never a moment where you're like, I want to take a drink. It's just you're seeing the old symptoms or causes.
Yeah, I mean, I recognize oh yeah, okay, I see what's going on here. I see what you're trying to do. Well, that's not going to work.
Like some people use it because they're shy and they want to be more sociable.
That's what it was for me. At first, when I realized when I had a couple of drinks, I was like, oh man, this takes the edge off, and I can go talk to that pretty girl and I'm not scared anymore. And so it's definitely learning to live without having to rely on that. And, I mean, because of the age that I drank too, and I stopped, a lot of that was just normal teenage stuff too. So it's hard sometimes. I mean, I could very easily convince myself that, oh, you could have a beer now. I mean, come on, it's been 26 years. You're a 7-year-old man. Of course you can drink. I mean, come on, go have a couple of nice beers. And that was the biggest issue I had with trying a non-alcoholic beer, was I was like, oh, this could be a slippery slope.
But it hasn't been for you yet.
Nope. No, not at all. And I remember specifically being with my wife and her saying like, well, have one and see how you are. And I did. And I remember, from what I remember, I think it was a Beck's. It was a Beck's non-alcoholic. And I tried it and I was like, oh, okay. And the thing is, after 2, I don't want to drink any more of them.
Yeah.
And what I really was drinking it for was very similar to why I smoke cigars. And I don't smoke a lot of cigars anymore. And I love cigars. but I have to be careful, because if I buy a box of cigars, I'll know I have a box of cigars in my humidor, and I'll be like, oh, it's a nice day outside. Let me go have a cigar. But my whole rule with cigars was, if I have to have a good hour to sit down, and I have to be with someone. It has to be, it's like a social aspect. Kind of like when people going and having a couple of drinks at the pub. But the difference with a guy like you who could probably go have a couple of drinks at the pub versus a guy like me who'll drink until there's no more alcohol left. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It happens sometimes.
Yeah, but absolutely. But my whole thing with non-alcoholic beer, why I like it, is that I liked beer. I like the taste of beer, but I don't want to get drunk. I have zero interest in getting drunk. I have zero interest in taking me to another place and escaping. I just like the taste of beer. And that was the biggest struggle I had, was like, do I do it? And I talked to quite a few people that are sober, and it's really up to everybody. I have guys in AA that'll tell me you're insane. You're playing with fire. Like, why would you do that? But I get it. I mean, I get where they're coming from. A guy who's new in the program, I would never tell him, oh, well, here, drink 6 of these. They have no alcohol in them, and it'll keep. But there's people that I know that have gotten sober, and that's what they've used. So whatever works for you. I would never work with someone that I'm sponsoring and tell them to go drink non-alcoholic beer, ever. I would say that you're an idiot to do that.
That's too close.
It's absolutely too close. But when I got into AA, I never, there's in the program they talk about try some controlled drinking. If you have someone that's new, tell them to go out, try controlled drinking, see how they do with it. I never did. But I applied that to non-alcoholic beer. I said, I'll try one and I'll see what happens. And I was okay. And I don't obsess over it. I don't need to have it in the fridge. Mm-hmm. We had people over for the Canelo Golovkin 2 fight. Usually in the past, because I've been drinking them for about 6 years, I would say, I'll get a couple of non-alcoholic beers. And I was like, just have coffee. I'm good. Or I'll have kombucha, which I prefer. But I do like non-alcoholic beer. But now what's ended up happening is that some of the ones that I tried at the beginning, my palate's changed, and I find they taste like absolute crap. Mm-hmm. Like the Beck's, I'll have one, and I'll be like, this is shit, compared to what I've tried since.
That being said, I brought some beers for Jason to taste.
Yes.
From La Brasserie Le Bockale, which is from Drummondville.
Yeah.
I brought 2.
Okay.
We'll just sip our way through. It's early in the morning. Even if it's non-alcoholic, it still messes with my brain. So I brought Decouverte IPA, which is a non-alcoholic IPA, which they said when they discovered that they could figure it out, it's a perfect symbiosis between the biting freshness of a good US IPA and the previously tasteless universe of non-alcoholic beer.
Well, you know what? It smells so fruity too.
It's still good. It's like, because I'm a big IPA hophead. It's
very good.
Tropical. It tastes honestly compared to like a normal IPA a little bit more watered down, but it has to be at this point because there's no alcohol.
Right. What I like about this is that when you look at it, you don't feel like someone just went into the back of the bar fridge and found that 0.5 that's been there for 3 years and no one orders. I mean, it feels like someone put some effort into this.
That's it. There's a big passion from Le Bockale because they're putting out like a whole series of these non-alcoholics, and they're all well done. And it's really hard to make a non-alcoholic beer. It takes extra steps. Yeah. Because basically what they do is they get the beer to where they would normally bottle it.
Yeah.
And then they have to boil it down.
Yeah.
Because alcohol boils at a lower temperature than water.
Yeah.
And they'll extract that. And then because they've done that, they have to, when they're packaging it, because the yeast is no longer a part of it, they have to inject CO2 into the canning so that it still has some carbonation to it.
That's what it is. Okay. What I find really impressive is the color, because most of the time, and I've never seen a non-alcoholic IPA.
Yeah, this is the first I've seen too.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of, I guess you call them lagers.
Yeah.
Like now you're seeing, it seems like every big company is, because it's becoming more and more popular, which is good for a guy like me because I can taste different ones. But most of the decent ones I've tried have been German ones.
Okay.
The Germans have, what I've tried has been pretty impressive. There's one company in Portugal called Superbock.
Yeah.
They've got a stout that is phenomenal.
Oh, really? I'll put on my list,
which was
to
really,
find.
and it's pretty inexpensive too. They can run you. They can run you back. I mean, it's not that expensive, but when you
in comparison to
others,
a normal beer, let's say.
Yeah, but I've found that one under $2,
really?
which I was really surprised. It's a smaller bottle, but it's pretty good. It was very, very good. It was probably the best one that I've tried since this company, because this company is pretty kick-ass.
Where do you think you'd be now if you hadn't stopped drinking?
Oh God, I don't know. Probably dead or in jail.
Really?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I definitely would not be where I'm at. I was always a hard worker, and I always wanted more out of life. Like, I wasn't one of these people that just was accepted just sitting on my ass and let's see what. Like, I always went out and got what I wanted. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. I mean, I would always get out, and if I wanted something out of life, I knew I had to work to go get it. And I think that was because of the, like my dad had a really good work ethic. I learned a lot from him when I was young of seeing someone get up and working hard and going to work and taking care of things. So I had that around me, and but I don't know. I mean, I really don't think I would be where I'm at. I know I wouldn't be, because I would have probably made some really bad decisions. Definitely.
And burned some bridges.
Oh yeah.
Those bridges, I find in the work environment that we're both in, is the most important thing to maintain. You never know when that human connection that you've had from the past will come and serve you positively in the future. Yeah. And it's funny because I was just talking to my wife about this morning, how being nice to people goes so far. It really goes a long way, especially if it's genuine. If you like people, and if you understand how human beings work, everybody at the end of the day just wants to be liked and loved. Everybody just wants to be validated. They just want to be made, it's nice when someone gives you a pat on the back and says, good job. It's nice when someone is kind. And I find a lot of the times people not being that way doesn't necessarily mean that they're mean people. It's just there's all these fucking walls that are up. There's walls, there's airs that people have sometimes that aren't necessarily what you think. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is fear-based. And I think the biggest thing I got from sobriety was learning to not be fearful. Like, fear will stop you from doing so many things, and it's the silliest thing sometimes, but you just got to push through that. And when you can really learn how to deal with your fear and not let it rule you, great things can happen. I really believe that. The fear of rejection.
Fear of not fitting in. And sometimes people will act goofy because they're uncomfortable, they're scared, and it's normal. I mean, everybody's like that. And it's funny when you're not that kind of person and you see someone acting like that, and it's just like, instead of judging that person, I'd rather be like, they're probably just a little uncomfortable, and they just need to come out of their and especially being somebody that talks to a lot of people. I see that a lot, especially with bands. I mean, you're in a band, when you're in an interview and you've got your couple of guys in the band, and you're doing an interview with someone, and everyone starts getting goofy and super sarcastic, and it's funny, but at the same time, sometimes it's like, okay, guys, like, enough.
It comes across wrong in the long run.
Yeah. It can come across as, oh, these guys are dicks, but they're not. They're just, either they're uncomfortable or they're,
tired, layovers, drunk, hungover.
Exactly. But it's interesting to see people that fall into that rut and they don't know how to get out of it. Mm-hmm. And then it leaves people with a certain opinion of them, and they're not like that at all.
Yeah, you don't want that to happen. Yeah.
What happens? It happens all the time. But and at some point you can't control what people think, but I like the idea of trying to let people give people a comfortable enough environment where they can feel they can be themselves. And that's kind of my goal when I meet people and especially when I interview people, is I want them to feel comfortable. And I want to relate to them. And it's tough. It's a challenge, because if you talk to a lot of different people, you'll get a lot of different attitudes, a lot of different, it really depends on, you never know how you're going to get somebody when they're in front of you. And it's interesting to see how have you grown as an interviewer over the course of your career? I mean, I think I've grown a lot, but I still think I have a lot more to grow. And it's never, there's certain guys that I look to as people that are really good at it. It's unfortunate, because before Charlie Rose was kind of outed as in the whole Me Too movement as being a bit of a creep, I really, really looked up to him because I thought he had a really great interviewing style, and I still do. I think he was a great interviewer. He's just probably let the power get to his head a bit. But guys like Charlie Rose, guys like George Stroumboulopoulos, who I think George is fantastic. They're real. I take a lot of cues from them. I think it's important to never think that you've got this, because just when you think you've got this is when you don't have it at all. It's like, I got this. No, it's like I'm confident in my abilities, but at the same time, I know that when I make a mistake or when I screw something up, I'm hard on myself. I'm really hard on myself. And it always happens when it's the biggest interviews. I screwed up when I interviewed Bono and Larry Mullen Jr. from U2. I screwed up when I did the interview. I started off and I was like, well, I'm sitting down here with Larry Mullen Jr. and The Edge from U2. And I kept talking, and Larry stopped me. He says, you just called Bono The Edge. Oh. And I was just like, oh. And I tried to defuse it, and I was like, oh my God, I'm a fucking idiot. And then they laughed. And at the end, I have this thing where if I interview an artist, I like to get my vinyl signed. Mm-hmm. And I brought a couple records for them to sign, and Bono signed it as The Edge.
Did he?
One of them,
so funny. That's so funny.
And he laughed about it. So
did that just throw you? Were you frazzled?
What it did was it immediately was like a slap in the face, and it brought me right back into the moment. And it made me say, whoa, whatever you're doing now, stop doing it. Mm-hmm. But it made me very fearful. But I realized you got so caught up in your fear, and you got so caught up, you forgot what you're doing. You're just talking to somebody. Yeah. And it was a huge lesson for me. Because sometimes I'll be talking. Did I just say that guy's name wrong? Did I just? And I didn't. But my mind will start to fuck with me.
It's that cycle, the spiral of darkness, I call it.
Yes. Yeah. And you don't want that to happen, but it's happened. It's happened a couple of times. I've had some little screw ups here and there.
It's like on stage, if I mess up a part, then I start focusing on it, and then I keep focusing, and then I mess up the next line, and then the spiral of darkness.
Yeah, I'm such a goof that I don't care. I've screwed up a couple of times. I've looked at Kevin, and he'll look at me like, "What the fuck did you just say?" Or I'll forget a part, and I'll be like, blah, 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 and he'll look at me and laugh. But I'm also lucky because I'm in an environment where I'm not going to, we're not going to sit down and have this big band meeting like, you screwed up. Like, if you're in that kind of an environment, obviously you're going to feel like, if you're a perfectionist. We've gotten to a point where, we don't play as much as we used to, but we've done enough in the past to know that it doesn't really matter. How
did you start playing in bands?
I started, I've always liked music. Ever since I'm a kid, I've always been obsessed with music.
Did you grow up in a house with music all around you? Instruments around you?
Not instruments, just music fans. And I grew up in the 70s, so 70s and 80s, which were great times for music. My parents listened to a lot of folk, a lot of R&B. So I had a lot of Motown, a lot of singer-songwriter stuff, a lot of Beatles. So I always liked music. I always liked melody. I never thought... I used to dream about being in a band, like when I was a kid, like fantasize about it. And obviously, being a Kiss fan too, and growing up in that time when Kiss was huge, and going out, as Paul Stanley for Halloween and stuff.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and say I wanted to be Gene Simmons. Like, I wanted to be Paul Stanley. I thought Paul was cool.
That's a Throwback Thursday picture that should come out.
Yeah, I know. I wish I had that picture. I specifically remembered dressing up as Kiss and having a broom handle as the stock, as the headstock of the guitar, and the body being cut out of cardboard, and going out as Paul Stanley. And I had the shoulder movement and everything. I was like really into it. I don't think I did the little rose tattoo, but I was a big Kiss fan, and my parents were really enthusiastic about music, and I remember being... I think I had a huge, massive poster of Bowie as a Thin White Duke when I was probably 11, and like a huge one, like one of those big European ones you would get at Dutchies, like a big poster. And so I really, like, I had pretty good music taste for a kid, and I liked everything. I really liked everything, like from ABBA to, I mean, my mom loved ABBA, like, so I had a lot of music around. But the first person that gave me the confidence to sing was really, I was in theater school, and I was trying to get in one of our first year studios that we were doing. I didn't really get a big part, but the director gave me this Elizabethan song, Greensleeves, to sing. And I sang that, and he was like, "You've got a really nice voice. You've got a beautiful voice." And so I was like, "Oh, cool." And then I ended up getting into a band with some guys. We were doing covers, and I just liked singing more than acting, because singing, I could drink, I could be in a band, I got more girls, there wasn't as many rehearsals. Acting was, theater was really intense and very, regimented. And so that was the switch. Once I got up on stage and I played my first show, I was like, wow, okay, this is where it's at.
When did Slaves on Dope transform from that band into Slaves on Dope?
Well, the first band I was in a band called Destiny's Daughter, and the guitar player from that band and I wanted to go in a different direction, and it was like 1991, 92. So I remember him and I went to the second Lollapalooza together in Boston. And it was Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Ice Cube, Jesus and Mary Chain, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Ministry. It was a really, really good year. And it was like Pearl Jam was on 10, Soundgarden was touring on Bad Motorfinger, Chili Peppers were touring on Blood Sugar Sex Magic. So it was like a really intense, formative year for me in terms of and I was a big Faith No More fan too. Like I really got into Faith No More on Angel Dust. And I had previously gotten The Real Thing. But I remember buying Angel Dust in Boston, and I was like, wow. I was at Newbury Comics, and I bought it. I was visiting a friend there, and I remember buying Angel Dust and hating it.
Really?
It's one of my favorite records now, but compared to The Real Thing, I was like, what are they doing? This is like, what? Like, where are those, those hooky, big choruses? And it took me a while, but then And now that was kind of like the benchmark for me of knowing when I really hate a record that I'm supposed to love at the beginning, it's going to end up being a record that I love. Because I didn't get it at all. I was like, what is this? And then it was the first record that made me realize sometimes you need to get into a record, and it's okay. Like you have to go, okay, I've got to give this more time. I can't just dismiss this right away. And it was really between Faith No More and that whole Lollapalooza was what made me want to do something different than what we were doing. And we ended up finding Kevin, Pat, and Lenny, who were in another band, and we just kind of fused together. We were a 5-piece. And the guitar player that I started the first band with, he left. I think we did our first show in Toronto. He came, we played the Cameron House, and we did that whole experience. We went and did our first show in Toronto, came back, and he quit. He was like, I don't want to do this. This is too much work. He was just a pussy. And that was it. I mean, he wasn't a pussy. He just wanted to go in a different direction.
One-off gigs are annoying.
Yeah, one-off. Well, I mean, listen, I think he just kind of, he ended up starting other bands and doing other stuff, but Slaves on Dope really took flight after that. We had been together for a bit, but that's when we really started to put the gears in. And
from my memory of the history of Slaves on Dope, it was a CHOM L'Esprit concert.
That was the biggest thing that we had gotten before we moved to the States. Yeah, that was a huge break for us.
You guys won CHOM L'Esprit, which was a battle of the bands, I want to say.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's when you met Too Tall, I want to say as well.
Yeah, Too Tall and I met. We submitted. I remember submitting for the CHOM L'Esprit with that old band.
Okay.
And remember sitting around hoping we would be in because back then, everyone would submit, and then on air they would announce the top 12.
Oh, really? Okay.
Compete.
That's interesting.
So I remember sitting by the radio and waiting for the top 12 and not getting in. And I remember that year that we did get it and hearing our name, we were so happy. And then we got, Too Tall contacted us, and we came in and did an interview for Made in Canada, and then we battled it out. It was like a battle of the bands. And when we finally won that thing, it was huge for us. I mean, we got to play. We played CHOM's 25th anniversary at the Spectrum, and we were opening up for Kim Mitchell, and it was broadcast live on air, and it was a huge deal for us. And that gave us, the confidence to go out, and we toured across Canada, and then we toured Canada 10 times until we finally said, look, there's only so much we can do. And we had a manager at the time he used to manage the Tea Party, and he was working with a couple of other artists, and he had said to us, if you want to make this a go, you should really move to LA, because the music you're doing, that's where it's happening.
What album was this on?
Pardon?
What album were you touring? Because you had two.
So we put out an EP in 94 called Sober.
Okay.
And then we put out a full length called One Good Turn Deserves Another, and that we did through Just in Time, which was like a jazz label here. And then we did an EP that we were taking with us to California. We said we're going to take this EP and we're going to move to California with it.
Okay, so Inches from the Main Line was much after LA.
That was in LA. That was the album. That was like our biggest release that we did. That was the one that we were on Sharon and Ozzy Osbourne's record label.
And then when did the transition switch from you singing into screaming? Yeah.
Probably around 97.
Okay.
Was when we always had little elements of it, small elements of it, but it would be like just for dramatic effect.
The Mike Patton influence.
Thing. Yeah. So I think really when I got Deftones Adrenaline and Around the Fur, big influence. Sepultura Roots, forget about it. I mean, and the first Soulfly record, like the Roots and the Soulfly record were huge influences on me, big time, and Fear Factory too, because Burton was the first guy to really sing and scream. Nobody was doing it before that. Mike was doing it a little bit, but Burton was the first guy. Like if anybody invented screamo or emo, it's Burton, and he doesn't get enough credit for it because he really sang and screamed. He didn't. He would sing his choruses and he would scream his verses or vice versa. And nobody really did that before.
That's true. Yeah.
So, and I don't think he gets enough credit for it. I think people kind of forget, but he was, Demanufacture was just like, and obsolete, like, whoa, like huge records for me. So that kind of, made us, and Korn too, it was all that time. That first wave of new metal that really made us go, whoa, we want to try something a little different.
How did you discover you could scream?
I think I just tried it. I used to do it live a lot. I used to scream. And Mike Patton, Mike would, you would see live videos of him and he would just be screaming, so like, I think when I heard Surprise You're Dead, that really was like, but it was more like a screaming. It wasn't really a full out scream. It was more like a hardcore scream, but it was really Max. Like when I heard Max screaming, doing Roots, and like I was like, whoa, like I want to try this. And I think I just tried it. And
you just worked at it in the jam room?
Yeah.
On stage?
Yeah. In the jam room. Yeah.
How do you keep your voice healthy as I
don't really scream as much as I used to. Like I listen back, like we did an anniversary show for Inches because it was the 15th anniversary of it. And we did a show at Turbo House where we did the album from front to back. And we rehearsed it, and it was rough. It was hard. It was really hard. It was hard. Like, I can't scream like that anymore. I can, but I don't want to.
It would be work to get back into that shape.
As you know, because you scream. It's hard. It's hard. And I really want to do different stuff with music. Like, I would love to just do a singer-songwriter record.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Just you with a guitar?
Well, I can't play guitar, but me and a good guitarist. But I'd like to do, I want to do different stuff. I love music so much, and there's so many different things I like to do. That's why when we started doing stuff with DMC,
that's
the
super
hip-hop
interesting.
Stuff and all that was really, for me, it was the most fun stuff that we've done in a long time. And I like doing. Kevin's really adamant about us doing these covers EPs, and we did one a few years back, and we have another one coming out this fall with 6 or 7 covers, and I like doing that. It's fun. But my whole attitude about music is very different now. It's not a job for me anymore. It's really it's all about fun.
So you moved to LA, because I sort of cut you off before. Yeah. I want to get back to that. You moved to LA, and how did you end up on, Sharon Osbourne's label? How did that all come about?
That was basically more of that positive thinking and just going out and going for it. Like I said, the manager we had at the time had gone to New York, and he had 2 names for us. He had Dave Kirby, who was an agent who passed away, who at the time was the agent for all these heavy bands, and a guy named Alex Guerrero, who worked with Todd Singerman, who was Sepultura without Max's manager for the first Sepultura record, and he was Lemmy's manager for Motorhead. So those are the 2 names we had, and we moved to LA, and we And the manager at the time was just trying to get us out of his hair. He was like, I think you guys should move to LA. That's where things. And we were like, okay, we're going to do it. And we did it. When we got there, we started playing on the Sunset scene. So we played a club called the Coconut Teaser that's not there anymore. We played the Troubadour, which used to have Metal Mondays, and we played on one of those. And we played at, the Roxy, the Whiskey. We did all of those. And the first big break that we got was, we ended up meeting, our first show in the States was with Motorhead. I'll never forget this. It was with Motorhead, the Dropkick Murphys, and Hatebreed.
That's crazy, yeah.
And we drove from Montreal to Seattle to do the show because we were moving to LA. So we went with the gear. We drove all the way to Seattle, and we lied. We went across the border, and we said, we're going to record in Vermont. So we had a letter saying we're going to record in the studio with all our gear. And Kevin and I just deadhead drove all the way to Seattle. And our guitar player, our bass player and drummer at the time, had taken the bus to LA and had found an apartment and got that part set up, and they had gotten jobs valet parking. So we met them in Seattle. They took the bus to Seattle from LA. We met them there. We rehearsed for 2 days in Seattle, and then we played. We showed up to the venue, and we were first of 4, which you know what that's like. And basically the agent had done us a favor. He got us on these 2 shows, Seattle and Portland. We show up, we're excited as hell. We get there and they're like, you're not playing. What do you mean we're not playing? Well, yeah, you're not playing. I mean, it's not happening.
No way.
Yeah. And we were fucking floored. We're like, what do you mean? And I'll never forget this as long as I live. Word got to Lemmy. Lemmy got off of his bus and went and spoke to the promoter and said, these boys drove all the way from Canada to play this fucking show. If they don't play, we're not playing. And they put us on at Doors, and we played for 20 minutes. But I'll never forget that.
That's an unbelievable story.
It was amazing. And
did you get to meet him afterwards and thank him?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. After we were downstairs backstage with him, and he was listening to the Dropkick Murphys. He was like, these are nice boys, but their fucking music makes my teeth itch. Like he never liked the bands that he toured with.
Really?
No.
Okay.
He's Lemmy, he's a fucking god. So the next day we played in Portland, and it was a much better experience. And we went to LA, and we weren't on the LA show, but we went to the gig because we knew the guys now. And we met a guy named Todd Singerman, and we said to him, hey, we're friends with Dave Kirby, and we'd like to talk to you about managing us. And he said, yeah, here's my number. And we ended up meeting Alex Guerrero, who worked with him, and Alex became our manager. And Alex was the guy that started to get things in motion for us. And there's a really sad ending to that relationship, unfortunately, because he ended up fucking robbing us for $20,000.
Oh,
but which really hurt because he was our champion.
Oh,
but he ended up getting us. We had started playing some shows in LA, and he got wind of us, and he says, "Okay, I'm going to see what's going on with you guys. I'll come see you play." And he ended up coming to see us play. And the first big gig that he got us on was he got us opening up for System of a Down. System did Tour of the Sunset Strip show tour. They played the Whiskey, the Roxy, and the Troubadour, and 3 nights in a row.
I heard they had like a crazy work ethic back then. They used to like have a party bus that would go around and pick up all their fans. The fans would just pay a bit, and there was a keg in the back.
Yeah.
Like back in the day, in that time era.
They drove. Their fans would come in from Glendale.
That's it. Yeah,
because they had a huge Armenian population fans. Because they were like all Armenian band, and I mean they were really, really popular. And they would bust their fans in, and they were just real hard workers and great guys. Super great guys. And I remember when we did that show, it was huge. I mean, we played the Whiskey with them, and it was packed, like jammed. Like everybody wanted to come to these shows, and seeing System in a club was pretty impressive. They were like a force to be reckoned with. So that was a really big break for us. And then, we started getting on better shows, and all these labels wanted to sign us. I mean, this guy named Steve Richards wanted to sign us, who was Slipknot's manager at the time. He's passed away too. And he worked for Epic. And he wanted us. I mean, I remember it was one of those guys that got up on his desk and jumped up and down and said, I'm going to, this is amazing. Like we got in his office and he was blasting our EP, and he wanted to sign us, and he was jumping up and down on his desk. Do
you think that you were like in that last era of...
We were.
Labels fighting over bands?
Yeah, because we had Epic, and then we had Tim Devine at Columbia, who was no slouch. I mean, this guy signed Train. He signed like huge bands. And he came to see us play too. When we played, we opened up for... Papa Roach at the... Was it Papa? I think it was Papa Roach at the House of Blues. And I remember he came to the show, and we had sat with him, and we turned down Steve Richards and Epic, and then Columbia really wanted us, and we came home for Christmas, and we were signing to Columbia. It was a done deal. And then we went back. We played that show in January with Papa Roach. And the night before we played the LA show, Sharon Osbourne had flown to Vegas to see us play with Papa Roach. And there was nobody at the Vegas show. It was like 15 people there, but she was there watching us. And after the show, she said, "Boys, I want to offer you to be the first band on our label, and we want to give you the Ozfest."
The first band on Sharon's label. I did not know that.
Yeah. And we said yes. And then right after that, we played LA, and Tim Devine came to see us play, and I remember him being there, and we avoided him because we were like, "Oh, we're shining, we're going to shine." And like we didn't even think about this guy wanted to develop our career, but we were like, no, we were such huge Ozzy fans, so we're like, fuck that, we want to be on Ozzy's label. We did, and it was a great experience.
And you were on those like early Ozfests, plural, or just one? 2000.
We did 2000, all of 2000, and then 2001, and it's funny because you talk about the Jammed in Edge gig, and that was, I'll always remember that gig because that was the last gig that we played, knowing that we were doing Ozfest 2001. And I remember we'd been touring in Texas. They flew us in for that show, paid us a ridiculous amount of money to play, and then we flew back to Texas to meet our bus and finish the rest of the tour. And 2 days later, we got a call saying that we weren't doing Ozfest. They wanted to pull us off of the road, and they wanted us to go and write another record. And we were very aggressive at that time, and we were like, well, we sent demos, and our manager's like, send demos and have them refuse. And once they refuse, because they get first right of refusal, it would be free, and you can go shop for another deal. And that's what we ended up doing, because we didn't know, but the label folded.
Oh, okay.
The label was folded.
They would have just held your record.
Yeah,
indefinitely.
Well, they were actually cool. They released us, so it wasn't an issue, but we were really disappointed. But they let us do Ozfest 2001. We did the Toronto show.
Okay.
And that was cool, but at the time we kind of felt rejected, and it was the start of us being very bitter, because we're like, and you know how the business is. I mean, it's a brutal business, but it was a fun time. I mean, and I have great relationships with that office still. Like, one of my best friends works for Sharon, John, and he's a great dude. One of my best buds, and yeah, I mean, I'm so forever grateful for that opportunity. I mean, just to do some of those things was, I mean, we toured with Pantera every fucking day. Like, we did a whole summer. That Ozfest, like, some of my favorite bands were on that Ozfest. Like, Pantera was on it. Queens of the Stone Age were opening up the main stage every day on Rated R. I mean, like, it was magic,
Craziest story from that Ozfest?
Probably Pantera. Walking by, they had these they weren't even mobile homes. They were like those containers that they would just drop that were dressing rooms. And walking by and hearing all this crazy noise, and then they had a little window, and just a chair just flew out of the window, and I almost hit me. And I looked over, and Zakk Wylde and Dimebag were tearing that trailer apart, just tearing it apart. And I was just like, wow, that is insane. Pretty much that for me, I'll never forget that. And I mean, those guys it was crazy how much they partied. It was insane.
It was authentic.
It was
the image represented that we all see.
Yeah. And it was
represented.
And it was the beginning of the end for the band, pretty much, because I think 2 years after they disbanded. But that was pretty crazy. Being my parents coming to see Ozfest, and Sharon greeting my mom, and bringing my mom and my stepdad to the side of the stage, but not like the side of the stage where everybody else stood, like where Sharon stood with Tony, who was Ozzy's assistant, and like being like, and like the look on my stepdad's face, like he still talks about that. And that was a pretty special moment, being able to bring them to watch the show. And I mean, going out and singing with Pantera every night, doing This Love, like all the people.
Did you? I had no idea you did that.
Yeah, all of us. Like, there's a bunch of people from the tour that would come out and do. Yeah. There's just a lot of memories with that band. And the Queens of the Stone Age memories were good, because we ended up developing a relationship with Josh and talking with him a lot, and because he knew how big of a Kai's fan I was. So I remember him coming off the bus, and he was like a little disheveled, and he would go into catering, and I was talking to him, and I think he said, from what I remember, because a lot of the times these stories end up being bigger in your head than they were, but I remember him saying if I brought him coffee, he would tell him, if you bring me a coffee, I'll tell you whatever you want about Kai's. and I did, and I ended up chatting with him quite a bit, and I would always be there, if time permitted, on the side of the stage watching them every fucking day. And no matter whatever shape they were in, they were amazing.
Because Ozfest was like a rotation, right?
Yeah.
Or was it like a lottery?
No, it was a rotation. Basically, if you were on the main, if the main stage was always the same, but to open up the main stage, the bands would basically they would rotate. So they would start off, like, say, first band on the second stage, right up until opening for the headliner of the second stage, who was Soulfly. You would be like, you would go up until like that point, and then you would rotate over to opening up the main stage.
Oh, really?
Which was kind of the shittiest slot, but it was still cool.
Because you're on this enormous stage, but it's so early.
So early that nobody, and but yeah, it was always a rotation. But I mean, you never didn't play in front of, we were always playing in front of 5,000 to 10,000 people, always. The biggest one, I think, was Somerset, Wisconsin. We played the main stage and there was 30,000 people. Wow. It was insane. Yeah. It was massive.
How do you keep your voice healthy for the radio?
I've been blessed with a pretty healthy voice. I mean, I don't smoke. I don't drink, really. And I'm somewhat healthy, so...
Yeah, because you're on the radio 5 nights a week, I want to say?
5 nights a week, 5 hours. But I mean, I'm not talking for 5 hours. I probably, something like this is more...
Work.
It's more work than... But no, I'm very conscious of it, and I try to stay as healthy as I can. And it's weird. I don't get a lot of throat infections or sinus stuff. It always hits my ears. Okay. My ears are like my Achilles heel. I'll get ear infections and stuff and sore ears, but I'm lucky. I don't... I'd like to say I have a secret, like I warm
concoction.
Up. I don't.
There's no warm-ups in the CHOM booth?
No, I just go and I turn the mic on, and I'm pretty lucky. But I don't sing a lot, and I'm a lot more conscious. I mean, I don't sing a lot with Slaves, so I'm a lot more conscious of when I do sing and I do gigs, and if my voice is sore, I'm like, man, I should really be careful because I don't want to screw up, my livelihood now. What do you
do in situations like that?
Just rest, rest. I had the worst I've ever done with my voice recently was we opened up for Head PE at Fun recently in like the last couple of years. And I drank a shitload of Red Bull, which I never do anymore. Heartburn, and it dried me right out. And instead of drinking water, I think I drank 3 or 4 Red Bulls that day. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, I haven't done this since like 2000. And, I remember that night, I couldn't talk. I was like, after the show. And I just dehydrated the whole apparatus. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't do that again.
Because it is your livelihood.
Yeah, I got to be careful.
How did the transition from frontman to radio occur?
Very, kind of a happy accident. I quit Slaves when I had my Slaves on Dope disbanded in 2003 or 2004? 2004. When my son was born, about 3 months before he was born, 4 months before he was born, I told, are we going to try this one now?
Sure, yeah, no, but I don't want to cut you off. I was just saying.
Okay, no, because I kind of want to have a sip of something.
We're moving on. We're on to Le Trou Noir.
That IPA was great.
I enjoyed it. Yeah. It was refreshing. It felt like a real beer.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I like about this company is that I don't feel like I'm having a fake beer. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm having a beer, but it's non-alcoholic. So I really enjoy it. And I would imagine for somebody that's a connoisseur, it's kind of like having a nice glass of wine. You don't want to get drunk. You just want to enjoy the taste of it. And that's what I like about non-alcoholics that are quality.
For designated drivers or for...
Yeah. Like I can have one of these and I don't feel, and I get a lot of drinkers always have that, oh, poor you can't drink. And I'm like, but you know what I mean? Like it's nice to have I don't want to say to be a part of, but it's nice to have that option. Mm-hmm. It is nice to have that
Was it hard for you at the beginning? Did you have to like lose your friends?
I lost my entire, and
couldn't be around.
A lot of it is because they didn't want to be around me. I never had an issue, but I remember trying to get together with some of my friends after I sobered up, and we were just too different.
Okay.
Yeah. I was a lot of drugs too, so
yeah, it was just a different,
drugs. I mean, in a month it won't be a drug, won't be an illegal drug, but I smoked a lot of pot too, and that was, I couldn't.
And you quit everything.
Yeah.
Sober.
Yeah.
Straight edge sober.
Yeah, I hate that label.
Yeah.
I like the straight edge. I love the idea of being straight edge, but there's other things that go with that lifestyle of straight edge that, the extreme is just too... It's like when I stopped eating meat, my wife and I were, you're excited about it. So we had a wedding and we had lined up Chuck Hughes to be our caterer. And I was like, Chuck Hughes is our caterer. I'm like, he's doing us a favor. And I remember we canceled with him because we went vegetarian, and we ended up getting Cru d'Essence to cater it. So we went from having Chuck Hughes to a vegan raw wedding. And I mean, people were there were people that really enjoyed it, and there were other people, like my stepdad ordered Domino's halfway through our wedding. I think Domino's box came in, and he dropped it on his thing. He just gave pizza to everybody because he was just like, it was funny. But we laughed. We weren't upset.
I guess that's how you have to handle it in situations
we laughed
like that.
because he was just like, I'm going to order a pizza. And we thought it was funny. But I wouldn't do that. I would be more conscious of our guests. I'd be like, okay, well, why don't we just have
a vegan option,
a vegetarian option. But even the vegan word, I mean, I'm more vegan than not, but just the whole label and I don't want to preach. I would rather just lead by example.
I completely agree with that.
I would rather show a meat eater some cool recipes and have them go. And that's what we've done. My wife and I have showed people stuff, have given them some options, and they've been like, wow. And slowly but surely, more and more of our friends are starting to go, well, we're eating less meat, we're doing this, but I don't want to be preachy. I hate that. So it's kind of the same thing with alcohol, and I don't like to live and let live. Like you do you, I'll do me, and if you need any information, I'm more than happy to give it to you. But there's nothing worse than a new vegetarian vegan that just is like going out there and
picketing.
And I've been that guy, but
it's just because you're excited.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like when you first start dating someone, like all you want to do is think about them and talk about them, and people around you are like nauseated. So it's kind of the same thing.
Okay, Trou Noir.
Yes, the Trou Noir.
It's a stout with chocolate flavors, reminiscent of toasted nuts with subtle coffee aromas.
Totally smells like iced coffee. That's good.
It's surprisingly good.
That's really, really good. That's really good.
We've had it poured and on the table since the beginning of this, so it's warmed up a bit, which is how I enjoy my stouts. But it's refreshing. It's nice. Radio host.
Yeah.
How did that start? You were saying that you quit slaves when your son was born?
Yeah. So when my son was born, I decided that I didn't want to be on the road anymore. I always said to myself, if I'm going to be that guy who's going to be on the road touring, I can't do both. I got to be a dad or one or the other. So I guess I kind of rose up to the occasion, and it was also a time to change. Like music had there's been so many disappointments, and we got on another label. We had signed to a subsidiary of MCA, and then MCA folded, so the subsidiary lost their distribution, and so they started, because they were an independent, they started licensing us to different territories, and we had a label in France that was really into us, that sent Kevin and I to France to do a bunch of press, and then we ended up going back and we did a few shows, and it went really well, and they wanted us to come back and do like a 3-month European tour, and that's what I quit right before that. So that kind of was like a bit of a soft spot for the guys, because I left. And I think from what Kevin tells me, they went to the label and they said, well, we're going to come, but we're going to have another singer. And they're like, no, it's either the full band or we don't want you guys to come. And it just didn't work out. So, I left and I ended up working. I got some menial jobs, just doing whatever. And I didn't do music for 5 years. I just said, no, I'm done. I was burnt out. And you know what it's like when you're 11 years, when you tour for 11 years nonstop, that's all you're thinking about is just this band. It's nice to just get away from it. And I was really I didn't miss it at all. There's nothing about it that I missed. I mean, I started just being a civilian, and it was great. I had a job. I wasn't necessarily happy in my life, but that was other reasons. But I really, really enjoyed not being in the band. And when I did come back to it, when Kevin and I started chatting again, and I came back to music, I enjoyed it. I came back with a completely different perspective. But the radio host thing happened. I was, at the time I was working with my dad in his trucking company, and I didn't really like what I was doing, but I was trying to provide for my family at the time. And I got wind from somebody that they were doing this. They needed an overnight person on Virgin. So for fun, when Kevin and I we were working on the new Slaves on Dope album, I did a demo, a radio demo, and I sent it into my buddy who worked at Virgin. And I said, okay, here's my demo. Can you pass it on? And a couple of weeks went by, and he messaged me back, and he goes, they're actually looking for someone at CHOM. I don't know why you heard Virgin. I was like, oh, cool. I didn't think about CHOM. I knew Too Tall, but I didn't even think about CHOM. So he says, I'm going to give it to the PD at CHOM. And PD at CHOM heard it, program director, and called me. And he's like, we'd like you to come in for a read. So I came in, and they offered me a job. And I was like, whoa. And I was working with my dad full time. So the idea of going and working there full time was a bit of a daunting task because they wanted me to do overnights, and I did it. I did overnights for a year and a half, and then I finally left my dad's. And
you were doing both jobs?
I was doing both for a year and a half, yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So it was a big challenge, and I ended up going, there for half the money like that I was making. But I was just like, it's not about money. It's about being happy. It's more important than money. So yeah, it was a good experience. I mean, I was really lucky to get the opportunity. But once I had the platform and got in, I was like, no, this is what I want to do. Was
it something you ever had in your mind that you wanted to be a DJ host? Like a radio host?
The only time I really liked radio. I really liked radio when I would go and do interviews with the band. We would be in the station. I would be like, this is awesome. I really like this. And I would always have fun when I would do the interviews with the hosts. I always liked being interviewed and chatting. And I always said, I could do this. Like, I think I could do this. And I remember I guest hosted a couple of times at different stations and would go do like an hour and be like, this is awesome. I really, really like this. And I like the whole environment. But I never thought I would. No, I never went to broadcast school or communications or.
How much freedom do you have with what you get to play at CHOM?
We have a music department, so they pretty much pick. But I have the 90s at 9, which is an hour, which I have a lot of input. When we first started building that feature, I put a lot of input into it. And we have the big shiny new song of the week, which we usually decide amongst ourselves, which is another feature on my show. So, but besides that, I mean, CHOM's got a format, and it's all generations of rock. It's pretty much like a hybrid, which is unique. Like, we're the only station in Canada that have that, where you have old and new. What I really like is that we've kind of gone back to supporting CanCon, but the newer CanCon. So instead of resting on the old CanCon, we're playing a lot more new bands, and that to me kills two birds with one stone, because we're helping local, and at the same time we're fulfilling the CanCon quota.
I want to clarify something, confirm something. I feel like this is my facts are true. Mm-hmm. The Franklin Electric, mm-hmm. Did you help get them signed? Mm-hmm. So I want to thank you for that, because I'm a huge fan.
Great guys too. Yeah. Great guys. They came into my studio, and they were I had gotten the demo, and I loved the demo, and I invited them to come in, and I gave it to our music department. And I was like, you really should check these guys out. Like, oh yeah, they sent us stuff, and they added it as a feature, big shiny new song of the week. So they came in, and I messaged Franz from Indica, and I said, dude, I was on Facebook Live, and I was on Facebook. I go, tune into CHOM right now. There's this band that you need to listen to, and he was messaging me the whole time they were playing. He was like, these guys are amazing. They sound like Mumford. They're great. And he was really into them. And they ended up signing to them. So I was really, really happy and proud of that.
There's an interesting movement going through Montreal with that style of new Montreal band sound.
Yeah, it's like another
with
wave.
The Damn Truth, Half Moon Run.
Yeah, like
Franklin Electric.
Half Moon 2 are another band that I really take great pride in knowing that I helped them out. And
did you help them out as well?
Yeah, I got 2 gold records right there.
That's true. Yeah,
they played on my show, and they were already on their way, but we played them at CHOM. It took a while for us. I kicked the album under our old program director's door, the CD, and I was like, and I put a note. I go, listen to this, and it took a while, but then finally they were like, wow, this is really good. And it went from, we have this feature called Classic Vinyl Sunday, where we'll take a classic album, whether it's the anniversary of that album or that artist is coming to town, we'll play the album from front to back on vinyl. And we ended up playing Dark Eyes, which is the first Half Moon Run album, from front to back. And that was almost a year and a half after I'd kicked it under the door. So I was pretty proud about that. So when they gave me a gold record for Dark Eyes, and I got one for Sun Leads Me On too, but I was very, very proud. Because to me, it symbolized a lot. It said, okay, I never got one of these with my band, but I can help another band get to where they want to go with the influence that I have. And that meant a lot. It goes back to helping people. I mean, it's important to help people. You know, because if you're always like me, then you never get the way the energy flows. Like, it's got to go back and forth. And when I got that gold record that was a proud moment for me to be able to know that I helped somebody out.
Well, thank you for that too, because I'm a huge fan. Both
Franklin
of
are great, and Franklin are doing great, and they still haven't written that record, but it's coming. It's coming, because I mean, John's a great songwriter, and he's a great dude too.
My father works the night shift.
Okay.
And he works like in a factory plant, and they listen to CHOM every night.
Yeah.
And when you sign off, you always say good night. You have like a tagline that you always say.
I'm like, see ya.
Or like good night, something, and they always say good night to you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Good night, Jason.
That's awesome.
Him and his coworkers.
That's awesome. Well, the thing with radio is that it's serendipitous and it's live. There's very few things nowadays that are that live. There's actually nothing, and that's what the attractive thing about radio is, that you can instantly connect with someone. And you know, there's not a lot of places in this city to listen to rock on the radio. There's actually none, so we're the only game in town. But I find, you know, if you listen to radio all week long, you're going to hear the same stuff. I mean, it's just the formula of radio. But I find that what I love about CHOM is that I grew up on CHOM. It's always been here. It was important to me coming up because it was my first real exposure to rock was through the radio, was through CHOM. So I remember listening to guys like Benoit Dufresne and guys like Toutal and you know, it was important to listen to these guys. Like I remember listening to a guy like Aaron Rand on the radio and working with him in the same building now at CJD. It's crazy, you know. It never gets old for me, you know.
It's very exciting. I was very proud when someone I knew was on the radio.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you know it, and it's fun for me because I've been able to get a couple of people that I know on air, like Hal.
Shout out to Hal.
Yeah, Hal's got a permanent shift now. And
that's amazing. Yeah.
It's crazy when I think about it, because I just met Hal because Rob, my bass player in Slaves, was in the show, like our parade band, when we would play in the parade, and Rob couldn't make it one year, so he goes, I got my buddy Hal, who's a great bass player, and I met Hal, and I loved Hal. I was like, wow, I love this guy. And Hal had a band called Eagle Tears, and I was like, well, I'm going to try to help you out. So myself, Heidi, and JF from Evenco, we kind of said, let's take these guys under our wing and try to see what we can do to help them out. And we helped them as far as we could, but then the band kind of imploded. But
Mountain Dust now, he's a part of it.
Yeah, he's in Mountain Dust, yeah. But you know, Eagle Tears had we helped get them some shows. They opened up for a couple of bands. They got airplay on CHOM. They were starting to get some stuff going, and Hal was working at a call center. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, he's like, well, you know, I was like, well, why don't you try to get you a job in here as an op? And I got him in the door, but he did everything else. I mean, he started doing demos when he was opping. Like, he would switch the mic into Audition, and he would record a bunch of demos, and he was giving the demos nonstop to management, and they were, you know, they would listen, and he didn't stop for like 2.5 years, 3 years. He just kept going, and finally he was just in the right place in the right time, and he did overnights for free. I think for like he did 20 overnights for free, and just worked on it. And they gave him airtime. They said, turn on the mic, and you know, somebody left recently, and he got a permanent shift, and it's great.
Well, congrats to Hal.
Yeah, I'm really happy for Hal. Hal's a great guy, and he deserves it.
Great guy, sick bass player.
Yeah, and a massive dude. Like, we always call him, like, he's like the lost son of Toutal.
He is very tall.
He's super tall.
When did your love affair with comic books begin?
That's young. My grandfather took me to I remember him taking me to the corner store, like the Dep, and they had that little turning, you know, thing with the comic books. And I remember buying Spider-Man comics and just being obsessed, and watching the Spider-Man cartoon. It started from as old as I can remember. And I remember getting those big Treasury editions, the big ones. There was a Batman one called Batman Strangest Cases, and seeing Neil Adams art. And I remember getting Superman versus Muhammad Ali, which was like another big one of those Treasury editions. And you know, Neil Adams art was really, really influential. And then once I started reading X-Men, the whole John Byrne, Chris Claremont X-Men run was just phenomenal.
And what still speaks to you as an adult?
I don't get time to read now. I really don't get time to read now. So I like a lot of that stuff still. I mean, I haven't, to be honest, like the last thing I think I read was, I started reading the Watchmen. There's like a Watchmen reboot. But I again, like I make the mistake of trying to get, you know, like the first issue will come out and I'll go get it, and then I won't have the 5 issues after, and I got to remember now, just wait a year till the trade comes out and then I'll pick it up and read it all. But I try to read when I can, but I just don't have time.
You're a pretty busy dude.
Yeah. I got to make time though. Like instead of being on my phone, I should be opening up, you know. I read Ready Player One with my son last year, and that was fun. It was the first book we read together because we knew the movie was coming out. We read that together. Like
great book. Yeah.
It was a great book. I totally enjoyed reading that. It was like right up my alley.
Absolutely.
And the problem is you read a book like that, and we were looking for the next book to read together, and I didn't want it to be a dud. So at one point I was like, okay, I think, because my son really wants to read The Shining and then Dr. Sleep, because he wants to know, you know, but because I showed him The Shining and he tripped out. So we were going to do that, and then he saw the size of the book and he's like, "That's so big."
It's intimidating.
Yeah, it is. It's like you see it. Like it's an intimidating book.
Yeah, or The Stand. Or
yeah, but I grew up loving Stephen King.
Me as well.
I read all his stuff when I was a kid.
Armada, which is also from the author.
Is it good? Did you read it?
It's good. It's like a watered down version of Ready Player One, but it's an easy transition if you're looking for another one.
That was our first instinct, because we saw, you know, there's like a little preview of it at the end of the book.
Yeah, it's also video game-ish.
Okay.
Yeah. More video game-ish and less.
Do you know that Ernest Cline wrote Fanboys?
No, but I love that movie.
Yeah, that was the first movie that he did was Fanboys.
Oh, no, I love that movie. Yeah.
Love Fanboys.
Underrated.
Totally underrated.
Yeah.
No one remembers it, and it's a great movie.
Favorite superhero?
The Hulk.
Favorite villain?
Tough to say. I mean, I really like Deathstroke. I like the Punisher. He's a bit of an anti-hero. Mm-hmm. But yeah, probably Deathstroke. At the time, I really, really liked him.
Best adaptation superhero movie?
Watchmen.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though they fucked up the ending, I still think to me, it captured the tone of the graphic novel. 100%. 100%. You?
I'm not a super comic book fan.
Yeah,
but
Watchmen.
I was just interested in... Watchmen
came out... I mean, it was kind of early in the game for the superhero. I mean, it's not part of this whole... It's one that gets forgotten a lot, but I really encourage people to go back and watch Watchmen, because Watchmen's really pretty badass.
It's a dark movie.
Yeah, and it still holds up. And they're doing the HBO show now.
Are they? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. That's going to be great.
So that's going to be good. I mean, I'm a big Watchmen fan. That's probably my favorite graphic novel. It's pretty... Have you ever read Watchmen?
No.
Oh, you need to. It's special.
I have an addictive personality, so...
Oh, you got to be careful?
Once I get into something, I get into it heavily.
But Watchmen's good. It's a good read. Oh, it's a great read.
Well, I want to thank you, Jason. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add.
No, this is fun.
Something that you want to promo coming up? Or
I mean, we have Slaves on Dope have a new EP coming out, Covers EP. Covers Volume 2. I should talk about that.
There you go. When's that coming out?
When I go to do the final 2 vocal sessions, and that Kevin will mix it. But probably, I would say October. Yeah. We're just going to work out a digital cover, and we're just going to put it up digitally. And then we have, we're going to put a new record out in 2019. We have about 7 songs written. So once that's done, we'll put that up.
Awesome. Looking forward to hearing it.
Cool.
Thank you very much for coming on to Vox and Hops and drinking some beers with me early in the morning. Non-alcoholic beers with me in the morning. I greatly appreciate it very much.
Cool.
All the best.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thank you so much for listening. That was Vox and Hops episode number 10. Jason Rockman, so cool, such a nice dude, so smart, so much to say. To realize at such a young age that you're struggling with alcoholism, and you just overcome that, and from there his life has just gotten better and better, and he just constantly keeps working. This guy such a hustler, big inspiration for mine. I see, all the hard work leads somewhere, so it inspires me to keep my head down and focus on my goals and move forward. So thank you for that, Jason. On the next podcast, I sit down with a very long time old friend of mine. I sit down with Chris Kells, the bassist of the Agonists, and he's the owner of Front to Back Visuals, which is a video company. He made many music videos for Cryptopsy. He is the go-to video director here in Montreal for a lot of the metal bands that are coming up around here. I've known Kells for probably longer than anyone that I've had on the podcast as of yet, and it led for a funny conversation. All that on Vox and Hops, episode number 11. As always, if you have any suggestions, you want to sponsor the show, you know anybody that would be interested in sponsoring the show, send me an email at matt@voxandhops.com. All the best. Thank you so much for listening. Cheers.